I'll introduce them as they're coming up. Very briefly, Sister Jayanti is the European Director of the Brahma Kumaris World University. She's also brought in her immeasurable wisdom to the world on the topic of spirituality. And for anyone who's heard her, they know how clear and eloquent and simple her talks and her teaching is. If you want to see serenity in action, you can catch her on YouTube. And our other guest tonight is Fiona Harrold. And Fiona is, as Davina described to you, a coach and an author with an enviable international reputation that she's built over the last 20 years. We were talking over dinner about how she's been described by some of the press. And she was called the Queen Bee of coaching, which is a bit sarky. And I can tell you from my own experience, just having met her and spoken to her for a bit, she's delightful and warm and not a queen bee at all. What both of our speakers have tonight, their special qualities are, it seems to me, they're both deeply curious about other people. And I don't think I'd be wrong by saying that both of them think that anything is possible. Is that right? Would you agree with that? Okay, now a little bit about what's going to happen for the next half hour. We've decided not to have an interviewer here, not to set an agenda. But rather, it's as if Fiona and Sister Jayanti have just met each other. In fact, they met each other about an hour ago for the first time, on a January evening. And it's as if, and this is the thing, it's as if they're sitting in an airport lounge waiting for their flights to take off. And each looks at the other across the table and says, she looks pretty interesting. I'd like to know a little bit more about her. And so they begin their conversation. It is January evening, in the winter. We're not in an airport lounge. But these two distinguished souls have just met each other, and they are curious about each other. So let's just eavesdrop for the next 30 minutes and hear how the conversation goes. Thank you.
Hello. How are you? I'm just curious about where you're going and what it is you're doing.
Well, I'm taking a break. It's January. It's just a few days after what apparently is the day when everyone gives up on their New Year resolutions. So I'm finding that quite fascinating. January the 17th is apparently when people give up on their New Year resolutions. So I find that really interesting. So I've been reading about why that is and why only 10% of people succeed in keeping those New Year goals. Shall I share that with you?
Please, I'm interested.
Well, it's intriguing because it's probably no surprise, really, but the things that make the difference are that they feel encouraged and they feel supported. But interestingly, they tell a trusted peer group. So they become accountable. So they're quite discreet about who they do tell. So it's a small trusted peer group, but they become accountable. I sort of think that's a real key, don't you?
I'm curious about the date because let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm with an organization called the Brahma Kumaris, and our founder passed away on the 18th of January 1969. And it's a very significant day for me and for the Brahma Kumaris, because we see that that is a day of special blessings and the highest omens for all of us, because we would say that he left the physical dimension and attained his perfect state. And as a result of that, those vibrations and that very, very high elevated energy is available for all of us if we want to bring about transformation in ourselves also. And so my life's purpose, in a sense, is connected with transformation. And so I'm fascinated by what you're talking about. And I really didn't know that there was a specific day which was, in a sense, the darkest night of the year. Physically, the darkest night is the 21st of December, but it seems that 17th of January is the spiritual darkest night. And of course, we always say that the darkest hour comes before the dawn. And so it's fantastic that the information you've shared absolutely tallies with what I understand.
That's amazing. Because it's almost as if there's a breakthrough waiting for people, if only they can have enough faith to get to that point. But the fact is that most people give up on that day. So before the point at which they have the opportunity for that fabulous influx of energy. So I think what that tells me is that holding the faith, having the faith in the dream, in yourself, is absolutely vital. Because if you give up on yourself, and you can't hold enough faith in the dream or the vision, it can't possibly come to pass. And perhaps that outside assistance, or that breakthrough, or that additional help, that of course you can't really foresee, you can't have that, you can't avail of that, because you stopped yourself just at that point. It's a bit like the Goethe quote on commitment, isn't it? Commit. And when you do, that's when unforeseen circumstances and opportunities can come your way.
It's interesting because Dadi arrived just on Monday and from India. And we weren't expecting her, so it's really a surprise visit. And within a few hours of landing, she was talking to a few of us just as she was doing other things. And she began to talk about how constantly maintaining hope is one of the most important aspects of spiritual life. And the moment you begin to feel hopeless, that's the moment when you can't move on. And as you said, help that is available can't reach you. And so you're picking up on that, and of course 17th January and what you mentioned about that. But yes, to be able to keep hope alive in my own heart and to hold the vision, it's very much what I believe in. And my journey began when I heard the vision of the founder, the person I was talking about a minute ago. And he shared that it was possible to have a beautiful world, a world of love, of joy, of happiness, so long as there was a change in human hearts and human consciousness. And if we were able to make that change, then definitely the world would change. And so I believe that this is something that's very important, holding that vision, not only for the world, that's one thing, but holding the vision for myself and what it is I know is possible for me. And it's like there's a memory inside that it is possible and I can achieve it, and I just have to remember and hold it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that dreams and visions have had bad press over the years. And I think that people like me, coaches, because I was one of the original life coaches in the United Kingdom, I think some people would blame people like me for giving people crazy dreams. Some people would call it actually false hope. Yeah. So people like the media psychologist, Oliver James, would say that people like me actually help make people more discontent. And at the time, actually, I didn't understand what he was getting at, and I rejected it completely. But truthfully, now, on reflection, I do think that there is something in what he's saying. Because I think that sometimes people chase the wrong dream. They chase a sort of celebrity dream. They chase a dream of fame. You know, these programs like the X Factor. You see people going on there, and they're chasing someone else's dream. You know, they're never going to materialize that dream for them. And that's actually really sad, because while they're chasing this other dream, they're actually not figuring out what theirs is. So I think what I think about dreams and visions now is that you've got to get the one that's right for you. You've got to get the dream that's in alignment with who you are. And then there won't be so much struggle and stress. And that's when the opportunities and the good fortune start to come your way. And actually, life really shouldn't be that difficult, because you're on the right path for you. Does that make sense?
I'd like to pick up on something that you were mentioning, and yes, what you're saying makes absolute sense. You spoke about me and just getting to know me and what my own dream and vision is. And coming from a spiritual university, this subject of me and who am I is absolutely the basic first step of being able to take any step further ahead on the spiritual path. And when I came across these teachings, and I was 19, I was in India on holiday, and I'd been in contact but not really studying these things. And it was actually Dadi Janki who I met at that point, and she shared with me this idea of the inner self and the spiritual being and understanding who I am. And it really was quite amazing for me. That first step of knowing myself and then discovering what are my own inner values, because otherwise I hadn't even thought about, well, who am I, what are my values? But beginning on the spiritual path, it was a beautiful discovery to know I'm not just this physical body, but there's something more. And then further, that what there is within the self is something very beautiful, but we don't usually connect with it. And so this is why we don't value ourselves. And this thing about depression and people losing hope, I think it's because there's a disconnect with the inner being. And there's a connection just with the material world and chasing the dreams of the advertisers, never mind the X Factor. But any time you switch on the television or you walk into the railway station, the tube station or anything, you're seeing the dreams that the advertiser telling you, you should be able to do this or you should be able to have this. And of course that totally is distracting. And so they're not able to see themselves or what their real vision is or know of the beauty of the self. And so the journey of spirituality is very much one of the discovery of the self and the inner being.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think actually it's incredibly difficult to like oneself. I think it's incredibly difficult to appreciate oneself when there are such impossible standards, for women in particular, impossible standards of perfection held up in front of us. You know, the moment we go outside our front door, it's there. It's really difficult. I mean, I find it difficult. I set, high standards for myself in every which way. And I do think it's good to aspire to be the best that you can be. I do. And then I suppose you've got to be careful that you're not living with constant dissatisfaction. My sister was a beauty queen. And in my family, I was the one who was, so my mum used to put me forward into all these beauty competitions, but I did not look like my sister. So she would win the competitions, Miss Northern Ireland and things, and I didn't. So I sort of grew up with that feeling of just not being good enough in that respect. It's very hard to shake that off, especially in what I do, because it's about helping people better themselves in every which way. So sometimes it's hard to walk that line.
I think it becomes hard if it's something external that's imposed on you, and you're expected to win or succeed or achieve on the external level. And at the point where you've taken time to just be with yourself and go into yourself, and you discover that there are beautiful qualities within yourself, and if you maintain that awareness of the inner being, and ego is not what it's about, but really the value for the self and the confidence you have in yourself when you know that you're a soul, you're not the body. And so all the expectations that other people have of you in terms of physical appearance and matching up to standards of size and shape and form and color, all that becomes irrelevant. But what does happen is that getting in touch with yourself, you begin to recognize your own uniqueness, and you're able to appreciate the uniqueness of every single human being, every individual. And because you're valuing yourself and you're respecting yourself, then there's an appreciation of others around you and their value and the beauty of that soul. And so I think that life changed for me very dramatically at the time when I began this journey, because otherwise it was the same, you know, expectations of others and wanting to fulfill those and so on. But in this case, then, there was not even the question of just seeing myself as a woman, but seeing myself as a soul meant that all those invisible ceilings that come to you otherwise, you're able to go beyond all of that. And the other thing was the subject of discontent or contentment. I understand people commenting that you're creating discontent. But the thought that crossed my mind when I heard you say that is that it's very easy to become stagnant. There's a little comfort zone that I have, and I sit there and I live there. And yet there's a possibility of a lot more being experienced and explored. And if I'm willing to step out of that comfort zone, then yes, it's a discontent in the sense that I begin to appreciate that life isn't just about material living. There's something more, there's something beyond that I can find out about. And so I think that that discontent is very important. And then on the spiritual journey, it's this paradox of recognizing that it is a journey. And so I'll only be completely satisfied when I've come to the end of the journey, whenever that may be. But as I move along, I have to create within myself the contentment of knowing that the right thing is happening at the right time. And if I'm discontent at this moment, my energy is a negative energy, it's a destructive energy, and I'm not able to do what it is I'm supposed to be doing at this moment. And in that discontent, there's an anger and frustration that comes out with other people around me and causes a disturbance. At least that's what my experience tells me. And yet, if I can be content knowing that I'm here, there's a reason to be here, and there's a purpose to be fulfilled, and the next step is going to be the right step. It's going to be as it should be. And things are as they are. I can't reverse them. I can't change them in the way that I would like to or control them. But what I can do is just simply keep taking a step forward, one at a time.
I suppose what you're saying, or at least this is the way that I would interpret it, is that you've got to somehow get to a point where you are appreciating what you've got now,
right,
what you've achieved,
yeah,
the good things that you have around you, while still anticipating what's to come and feeling excited about what's to come. Because there is that saying that you're either growing or you're dying. Would you agree with that? I quite like that.
Absolutely.
Would you?
Yes.
Good, I like that. Yeah.
And I think that at this moment in time, I reckon we're in a very special time in history. A time when truly we can grow and move forward and understand so much and achieve so much for ourselves and do so much for the world. And if I'm not recognizing that time and that energy that is available, I'm losing out.
Yeah.
And so yes, it is as if I'm not just standing, but I'm actually moving backwards. And so very important time to be able to have that awareness and excitement to know that every step you take is going to open more doors of fortune.
I totally agree. And I don't know if you've been watching this program called Benefit Street. I think there's been about 3 episodes. It's pretty depressing viewing. Essentially, it's about a street in Birmingham where most of the people are on welfare. They don't work, they receive benefits. And I just think, wow. I think a couple of things. I think those people have lost hope. I think they've lost faith in themselves. I think they've lost faith in their ability to change their life for the better. And then I sometimes think, well, wait a minute, do people want to? This might sound like a really crazy thing to say, but maybe some people, are they content with less? You know, if we give them just enough to get by on, and their expectations of themselves become lower and lower, are we really helping people when we do that? Or are we enabling them to stay helpless?
Just one point. I haven't watched television since, I think, 1966, 67. So I've heard of the X Factor, but I hadn't heard of Benefit Street.
See what you're missing?
But one of the things that we learn about here is the whole subject of karma. And the word karma literally just means action. But what it's saying is that do something. Do whatever it is you can through your thoughts, your words, your actions, your connections, your relationships, so that then you're able to give to others. And if you're doing something that's of benefit, then of course the feedback that comes to you is that of great joy and happiness. And so it's something that's, I mentioned the subject of the self. And then the second subject that we've been exploring is the subject of the divine and how to connect and how to draw that power. And the third subject is the subject of action, karma. And so, again, there's nobody who's just going to sit back and not do anything. There's always going to be something that you're engaged in. And if you're consciously aware, then what you're going to be doing is something which is of benefit. Benefit for yourself and benefit to others. And if you're unaware, then the tendency in that state of darkness is that it's going to be something negative that takes over. It's going to be greed or attachment or ego. Something is going to step in, because there can never be a vacuum. So there's conscious good, or if there isn't conscious good, then the forces around us in the world today are highly negative, and so they're going to catch hold of me and influence me. And so yes, I'm sure that these people they've lost hope. They don't have a vision of the future. And this is what I've found is being talked about a lot in terms of young people and just unemployment and lack of hope in terms of the future. And what I've found is that if people begin to see things from a different perspective, one is just here, the material perspective, and the other is the spiritual perspective. And when you begin to see things from a spiritual perspective, you begin to understand what's going on differently, but also you're able to know what it is you can do and how it is you can set about it and make your own way and create your own destiny. You don't sit back and wait for something to come to you, but you begin to do something.
I think that's it. I think that's my big concern, is that we have got an attitude in our society, and actually across the world, where it's somehow acceptable and okay for people to wait, to be saved, to wait for a job to come, to wait to be given a job. It's that sense of entitlement. And if that job doesn't come, if the government doesn't provide, well, they're entitled to benefits until that time comes. So you see, if people change that perspective to the one that you've just described, Sister Jayanti, where they were looking to see where they could give, that would change everything.
Absolutely. And it would make their life that much more fulfilling and happier, and you learn so much. Once you begin to do something, maybe you even make mistakes, but that also teaches you. But it's only by doing something that you learn. When I decided that this was to be my life, Daddy Jayanti said something very beautiful to me. She gave me 3 lessons that I had to keep in mind. One was to make sure that I kept myself with good company, people who are going to inspire me and carry me forward, rather than people who are going to criticize and gossip and pull me down. And so that had to be my awareness. I had to be picky, choosy about which company I would keep.
That's so nice, because some people might criticize that as being judgmental.
No, it was my own protection. And so it's not a judgment against anyone else, but what is it that's going to be of benefit for me? And if I'm taking benefit, then at some point I'm going to start giving benefit too. So that was one. The second one was never to say no, which meant that if there was any...
I love that. That's why I'm here tonight. I said yes.
Well, actually, it was quite a lot of courage on your part. You don't know the organization, you don't know where you were coming, you didn't know the people. And then suddenly the program all changed, and we had another guest that he decided to come to London, so we changed the program. But also then my dear brother Arnold changed the goalposts, and so instead of an interview, it became a conversation with somebody you'd only met an hour ago. So it did take a lot of courage, so thank you.
Thank you.
But her point about that was that if you think that this task is too big for me, and you say no for that reason, then you're never going to learn how to be able to do it. If you say yes, you learn along the way, and the task will be accomplished. And on the other side, if you think, well, couldn't they find somebody else to do it? Is that why they're asking me to do it? Why should I do it? Again, there's a purpose and a reason, and take that opportunity also. And so, never say no. And then the third thing she told me was, never waste your time. Make sure that you're using your time in a worthwhile way. And I'm repeating things that have helped me in my life, but I think that they're of use for January.
I think that's amazing that you said that, because when I was looking into why people gave up on their New Year resolutions on the 17th of January and why people succeeded, what I found, all the evidence said that people who succeeded with their goals, and you know this is probably true in January or any time, that number one, they had support and encouragement around them, and number two, they had people who held them accountable. So I think the inspiration of people around you is absolutely critical. And I think when people lose hope, they probably don't have a single person to say to them, you can.
Right.
Because that's all it takes. I mean, that's all it takes, is for someone who completely believes in you to say that, just to say those words, and for you to take that on board. Because sometimes you don't believe in yourself. You just don't. And you need someone to give you that self-belief that you can borrow or just use until your own grows.
What we have here is a community, a family. You can call it both. But we come together every day. And the lesson we study every day, it's a different lesson every day, but the essence of that lesson is you can do it.
Wow.
Really, you can put it as simply as that. That within you there is that truth, there is that beauty, there is the love, and all you have to do is emerge it. But it can only happen if there's the connection with the one above. And so that connection is going to make it happen.
See, that's really interesting. Because I think the way that I would interpret that for myself is that when you are in alignment with what you were here to do, that's when your goals, dreams, ambitions, visions are actually likely to come about if you do the work. If you put the work in, if you take the physical steps. So I guess we're saying something quite similar.
I think we are,
Yeah.
and I'm actually quite amazed that we haven't had a difference of opinion over anything. And I'm sure people here are thinking that all this is being stage managed. And
I'm checking my
really,
script.
really, we
Yeah.
did not know what the
Yeah.
other one was going to say. And it was total trust that it would work out as it did. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think Arnold
you.
is trying to give us a signal.
And it's just in time because your flights are about to depart.
Is that the time?
You know, I was sitting in the audience thinking, I really don't want this conversation to end. And I was also thinking that something quite miraculous was going on here, in that there were two separate but related activities. One was coaching spiritually, and the other one was spiritual coaching. And, you know, they're different, but they're not different. They overlap. It was like hearing waves just, you know, coming together and parting. And also there was something about the art of conversation. And I was just thinking that, you know, it's an art that's being lost. And I hope tonight you saw a demonstration of what real conversation is like when people listen to one another and pick up cues and ask questions and are deeply curious and can also state their position. Now I have a question to ask the both of you. I want your top single tip for 2014. What's your tip for 2014, Fiona?
I think it would be actually to surround yourself with people who are going to uplift you, people who are going to uplift your vision for yourself, for your year, for your life ahead. I think it makes all the difference in the world. Yeah.
Thank you. Sister Jayanti.
Make time for yourself. Begin your day with just a few minutes in which you can look at yourself and see what's going on and find that inner space of dignity and love for yourself.
Thank you both. Well, flight 2014 is about to take off. Thank you both very, very much. Okay.